The wind moaned across the open plains, dragging a veil of dust over the moonlit ranch. Inside, Caleb's heart wiped the sweat from his brow, the day's labor still burning in his muscles. The cattle were restless tonight. Something in the air whispered trouble. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, his hound, Buck, lifted his head and growled low. Caleb froze, listening. Through the steady hum of crickets came a faint sound, soft, desperate. A cry. Grabbing his rifle, he stepped into the cold night. The sound came from beyond the fence line, near the creek that cut through his land. He followed it cautiously until the beam of his lantern fell upon a shape in the dirt. It was a girl, barely 20, wrapped in torn buckskin, blood staining her side. A young native woman, her eyes fluttered open, wide with fear. "Easy now," Caleb whispered, lowering his gun. "You're hurt." She tried to crawl away, muttering something in her tongue, but collapsed. Without thinking, he lifted her into his arms. Her body trembled with fever and pain. He carried her to his cabin, laid her on the bed, and lit the fire. Caleb worked fast. He knew infection when he saw it. He cleaned the wound, stitched the torn flesh with trembling hands. The girl whimpered but didn't scream. Her strength was fading, and so was the night. "Who did this to you?" he murmured, but she only looked at him, her eyes dark pools of sorrow. He offered her water. She took a sip and whispered a single word, "Taya." Her name, Taya, Caleb repeated softly. "You'll be safe here." For hours he tended to her, wiping sweat from her brow, whispering comfort she might not even understand. Outside, coyotes howled in the distance, and the fire cracked with restless heat. As dawn painted the plains gold, Caleb stepped outside to fetch more water. The world felt too still, too quiet. Then Buck started barking wildly. Caleb looked up, and his heart froze. On every ridge surrounding the ranch, silent figures stood, men and women of Taya's tribe, painted in shadow and morning light. Bows drawn, spears raised. Their faces were unreadable, eyes locked on the cabin where one of their own lay inside. Caleb slowly lowered the bucket. He could feel their judgment, the grief, their suspicion. He wanted to shout, "I helped her," but his voice caught in his throat. Taya appeared at the doorway, pale but standing, her hand gripping the post for balance. The warriors tensed. Caleb raised a hand, voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. "She's alive because I helped her," he said. "If you want me dead for that, I'll stand my ground." The leader, an older man with gray braids and eyes like winter stone, stepped forward. He studied Caleb for a long, heavy silence that seemed to bend the air itself. Then Taya spoke in her language, soft, trembling, but filled with emotion. Her words carried over the still air, and one by one, the warriors lowered their weapons. Caleb exhaled, relief flooding through him, but the old man's gaze didn't waver. He pointed a finger at Caleb and said something Taya translated in broken English. He say, "If you lie, if she die, they come again. No mercy." Then, just as silently as they'd appeared, the tribe vanished back into the morning mist, leaving only the hush of wind and the echo of warning behind. Caleb turned to Taya, whose eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Looks like we've got a long road ahead," he said quietly. She nodded. As the sun climbed higher, the ranch stood quiet once more, but something had changed. Caleb knew the plains would never feel the same again. He had crossed a line between two worlds, and only time would tell if mercy or vengeance would follow. The days that followed were uneasy. The plains felt heavier, quieter. Caleb could sense unseen eyes watching from the distant ridges. Every creak of the windmill, every rustle in the grass, made his hand twitch toward his rifle. Yet inside that small cabin, a strange peace grew, slowly, cautiously, between two wounded souls. Taya healed, though the pain in her side lingered like a shadow. She spoke little, her words clipped and uncertain, but her eyes said much more. She watched Caleb with quiet curiosity. The way he worked, the way he muttered to his animals, the way he spoke to the open sky as if it were listening. One night, as rain hammered the roof, Taya finally asked, "Why help me? You know my people hate your kind." Caleb looked up from the fire. "Because hate's already taken too much from both sides," he said. "Someone's got to stop it somewhere. Maybe I just figured that someone might as well be me." Taya stared into the flames, thinking, "My father, he is Chief Anokan. He thinks white men only take and burn." Caleb's heart sank. The old man from that morning, the one who had stared at him with icy fire, was her father. "Then I reckon I've got a lot to prove," he said quietly. Taya's lips trembled into something almost like a smile. He won't believe words, only truth. Weeks passed. Taya grew strong enough to walk again, and she began helping around the ranch, feeding horses, mending fences, humming strange, haunting melodies as she worked. Caleb listened from afar, something stirring in his chest he hadn't felt in years. But peace on the prairie never lasts long. One evening, smoke rose on the horizon, his north pasture. Caleb grabbed his rifle and raced through the fields. Flames clawed at the dry grass, spreading fast. He fought it with buckets and a wet cloth, but the heat was merciless. Through the smoke, he saw them, 2 young men from Taya's tribe, setting the fire deliberately. Their faces twisted with anger and grief. Caleb froze. He could shoot. He could stop them. But his finger wouldn't move. "Go," he shouted instead, "before this takes us all." They vanished into the smoke, and he turned back to the blaze, choking, burning, desperate. Then Taya appeared beside him, drenched from the well, helping him fight the fire until it was nothing but blackened ash and steam. Hours later, exhausted, she fell to her knees. They're my brother's men," she whispered. "They think you killed our scout last winter." Caleb's voice cracked. "I never killed no one who wasn't comin' to kill me first." "I know," she said softly. "But they don't. My father doesn't." Silence hung between them. Then, with trembling resolve, Taya stood. "Let me go to them. Let me tell them truth." "No." Caleb's tone was firm, almost pleading. "If you go, they might not let you come back." "If I don't," she said, "you'll die here alone." That night, as the wind howled like 1,000 spirits, Taya rode away into the darkness. Caleb watched her vanish beyond the hills, praying the spirits of the plains would guard her. 2 days passed, then 3. No sign, no sound, only emptiness. Caleb began to believe she was gone for good. But on the 4th dawn, Buck barked wildly. Caleb grabbed his rifle and stepped outside, then stopped dead in his tracks. Over the ridge came Taya, riding slow, surrounded by her people. Not as a prisoner, but as a guide. At her side rode Chief Anokan. The tribe halted before the cabin. The chief dismounted and stepped forward. His gaze was no longer cold. It was searching. "My daughter says you saved her life. You fought fire instead of raising gun. You speak truth." Caleb met his eyes. "Yes, sir. That's all I've got." For a long, suffocating silence, the chief said nothing. Then he extended his hand. "Then you have peace between you and my people." Caleb took it. Their handshake felt heavier than words, like 2 worlds bridging a lifetime of blood and pain. As the tribe rode away, Taya lingered. She turned to Caleb and smiled softly. "Now you're part of the land," she said. He chuckled. "Guess that makes you my teacher." She touched his chest lightly. "No, just your friend." As she rode off to join her people, Caleb watched until she was a shadow against the sunrise. The wind carried her voice faintly, an old song of healing and hope. He stood there, hat in hand, the plains around him alive again with light. And though she was gone, he knew the silence that once haunted his ranch would never return. It had been filled with truth, forgiveness, and something stronger than both. The prairie was wide, but not as wide as a man's heart when he chooses compassion over fear. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought with guns, but with grace. Caleb's kindness changed more than one life. It changed generations. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button now. More tales of courage, redemption, and the human spirit are coming your way. Join our growing family, and never miss the next story that could touch your heart.